Hi, this particular video is an answer to a fairly tough question that's been posed on one of the comments to one of the existing videos. Please do stop the video, have a go at the question and then compare your solution. You're going to need a fair few skills to be able to work through this and be fairly confident in algebra, factorisation, volumes, surface areas and all sorts of little bits and pieces that you might need in order to answer the question. But it's well worthwhile giving it a go. It's probably going to be about 5 or 6 marks, around about grade 7, grade 8, something like that. So I hope you find the video useful. Please do add a comment below if you're not sure about anything. I'll always come back to you and I'll look forward to seeing you inside the video. Hi, this particular question appeared on the comments to one of my existing videos, so I thought it might be worthwhile posting this as one of the answers to tough questions playlist. The particular question does involve quite a few different skills. You do need to be able to work through things like factorisation, substitution, all this sort of stuff as well. So the first thing I'd suggest is that if you've got something very descriptive like this, it might be worthwhile just actually sketching something out to represent what it is they're actually talking about. And they're saying that it's got a height of 4, a width of x and a length of y, and it's a cuboid. It's a regular prism, a rectangular prism. Okay, so we're told that the volume of the cuboid is 119 centimeters cubed. So what we mean by that is if we multiply this area by the depth, in other words 4xy, we're going to get the volume. So 4xy equals 119, which is the volume of the cuboid. Okay, and then we're also told the surface area. Well, let's have a look at how we make that surface area up. So the surface area is going to be 2 lots of this end here, which is 2 times 4x, plus 2 lots of the bottom, because it's the x times y at the bottom here. If I just make that like that, is this x times y at the bottom here and the x times y at the top here, so that's going to be 2 lots of x times y. And then we've also got the front and the back, and the front here is going to be 4y and the back is also going to be 4y, so that's going to give you 2 times 4y, and all of that added together, we're told in the question, will equal 155.5. Okay, so let's just tidy that up a little bit. So what we're saying is the surface area, if I just move this over here, the surface area is going to be equal to 2 times 4x, which is going to be 8x, plus 2 times xy, so that's going to be 2xy, plus 2 times 4y is going to be 8y. And that's all added together is going to make 155.5. Okay, all right. So hopefully that's okay. And we've kind of got to this particular point where we've got effectively 2 equations. We've got the equation for the volume and we've got the equation for the surface area. And then I'm going to use the technique of substitution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute the value of y, and the value of y is going to be, if I divide both sides by 4x, I'm going to get y equals 119 divided by 4x. Now I must say at this point this is where there is a bit of a departure from a fairly traditional GCSE, because the numbers really are quite difficult to work with. We've got 155.5 and 119, and it just looks like it's going to be quite tough. And indeed it is, particularly when we get to the factorisation stage. So please do, if this has sort of got you kind of inspired to go through a bit further from here, please do stop the video and carry on from here, because what we're going to do is we're going to take this value of y and we're going to plug it in to the surface area equation. So I'm going to write this as 8x plus 2 times x, and rather than y, I'm going to write 119 over 4x. Okay, and then the next bit of it is rather than y, I'm going to write again 119 over 4x, and that all still equals 155.5. Okay, so what we've got to do now is multiply everything out and solve it for x. Okay, right. And this is where the rubber meets the road. It does get much more difficult at this point. So please do bear with me. I hope it's okay for you. Let's see how we get on with it. Okay, so the first thing is I'm going to keep this as 8x. Well, I'm absolutely happy with that. Okay, now the thing about 2x and 4x is I can divide top and bottom by 2x. And if I do that, that's really good because I'm going to get 2x and 4x will divide, 2x will go into 4x twice. So what I'm going to end up with is 119 over 2. And hopefully you can see that. Okay, 2x and 4x will cancel themselves out. Okay, and it's a similar story really with this 8 and 4x here, because what I end up with is saying, well, actually, that will reduce down to 2 times 119 over x. Okay, 2 times 119 over x, because 4 will divide into 8 twice. I can't do anything about the x, it's got to stay there, but certainly this 4 and this 8 I can reduce down to 2. And again, all of that added up together is going to equal 155.5. Okay, so now we need to just kind of work this out and try to find a way of solving for x. So let me just write this as I'm going to write it over here. So I'm going to have, we'll have space, yeah. I'm going to have 8x plus 119 divided by 2 is going to be 59.5 plus, and then I've got 2 times 119 divided by x is going to be 238 over x, and that equals 155.5. Okay, so where can we go from there? Well, it's going to be a little bit slow and tedious, but we'll kind of work it through, hopefully. So let's just move down the page a little bit. Hopefully you're following this all right. I did warn you, it's going to take a bit of working through. Okay, so I'm going to get my terms containing x on one side, and I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to move it over here. So what I end up with is going to be 8x plus 238 over x equals, now I've got 155 minus 59.5, and that kind of works out at a reasonably comfortable 96. Okay, well, it makes me feel a little bit better when I see sort of smaller numbers coming through. Okay, so the other thing is that now I've got basically these two fractions. Now, the only way I'm going to add those two fractions together is if they've got the same denominator. And currently, one has got a denominator of 1, because I can write 8x over 1, and the other has got a denominator of x. So what I've got to do is I've got to multiply this fraction by x. So if I multiply top and bottom by x, what I end up with is 8x squared over x plus 238 over x, and that equals 96. Okay, things are starting to take shape a little bit now, because now I can pull this thing together and then cross multiply. So I'm going to get 8x squared plus 238 over x, and that equals 96. Okay, now remember that 96 is, as I wrote it before, is 96 over 1. So it allows me to cross multiply. 1 times this is going to be 8x squared plus 238. And x times this is going to be 96x. Okay, so at long last now, I've got a formula that I can kind of work with to be able to factorize, but I'm going to write it as equal to 0, because as you know, when you're factorizing, you do need to equal to 0. So let's move this 96x over, and I've got 8x squared minus 96x plus 238 equals 0. Okay, good. Right. It's still not quite there because it would just make my life a whole lot easier if I reduce these numbers a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of split this in two, and I'm going to go over to that side. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this as, if I just put a line there, 4x squared minus 48x plus 119 equals 0. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's what we've got to do to factorise. And all I've done there is I've just divided everything through by 2. Okay, so this is where you and I might depart a little bit. There is a way of solving this. I kind of get the idea that this is solvable. Now, you might decide you could use the quadratic formula. Okay, and that's absolutely fine. Please go ahead, and I'll just show you my working on the quadratic formula, which I actually did. Okay, and you can see here I used x equals minus b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, and I plugged in these numbers, and what I ended up with is a very neat value of x of 8.5 and y is 3.5 when I substituted it in, or the other value of x was 3.5, and again I substituted it in, I got 8.5. Okay, so there's no harm at all in using the quadratic formula. Please go ahead and use that. Just be very careful when you work out your discriminant. But what you'll find is if you do it accurately there, you'll find that it becomes the square root of 400, which is 20, which is fantastic. So it just gives you that level of confidence. However, there is another way, and I'll mention this in passing. Now, this is where there are a couple of videos on the channel about this, but basically, so this is quadratic formula. The other way is to say, well, 4 times 119 is 476. And what I'm looking for is two numbers that when I multiply them together make positive 476. And when I add them together make negative 48. Okay, well, those two numbers are actually going to be minus 34 and minus 14. Now, that took a little bit of time on a calculator. At that point, you might decide that the quadratic formula is going to be easy for you, and that's perfectly fine to do that. But what this allows me to do is to rewrite this quadratic formula in a different way. So I can write it as 4x squared minus 34x minus 14x plus 119 equals 0. Okay, so I haven't changed anything because minus 34x minus 14x is minus 48x. I haven't changed anything. I just now factorise the first two terms. And if I factorise the two terms for 2x, I get 2x minus 17. So this is these first two terms here. I factorise the second two terms, and I factorise them for minus 7. And guess what? I get 2x minus 17 equals 0. So what that allows me to do now, I've got two common factors, is to rewrite this as 2x minus 7 multiplied by 2x minus 17 equals 0. And therefore, I've got two values of x. One value of x is where x equals 7 over 2. And the other value of x is x equals 17 over 2. And you may recall, well, actually, if I rewrite that as 3.5, hopefully you can see that okay at the bottom of the screen there. I'll just move that up. And I rewrite this as 8.5. Okay, and you may recall from when I very briefly showed you the quadratic, we got 8.5 and 3.5. The quadratic formula will still give you exactly the same result. Okay, so let's just now, I'm going to turn the page here over, okay, and we're going to start again to work out the values of y. Okay, so what we've said is we've got a value of x is going to be 8.5. And we've got a value of x, which is also going to be 3.5. Okay, so those are the two values of x that we've got from these particular simultaneous equations. Now, what we need to do then is work out our values of y. Now, if you remember, we had y equals 119 divided by 4x. So that's going to be 119 divided by 4 times 8.5. So when x equals 8.5, y will equal 3.5. Okay, so that's one value. My next value is I've got y equals, again, 119 divided by 4x. So it's going to be 119 divided by 4 times 3.5. So that's going to be y is going to equal 8.5. So when x equals 3.5, y equals 8.5. Okay, now you may recall from the question right at the very beginning, it says that x is greater than y. So if x is greater than y, then the answer must be x equals 8.5 and y equals 3.5, and that is actually the answer to this particular question. Now, just for the purposes of completeness, I thought it'd be useful to kind of check this. And I think with these sorts of questions, particularly these sorts of number, value of the question, this would be 5 marks, I would have thought. It might be worthwhile if you've got a few minutes just checking your answer. And the way to do that is we would use surface area. So the surface area formula, if you remember, okay, and I'm not going to turn the sheet over, I'll just write it for you as 8x plus 2xy plus 8y, all equal to 155.5. So we take these values of x and y and just make sure that they do equal 155. So 8 times 8.5 plus 2 times 8.5 times 3.5 plus 8 times 3.5. Does that equal 155.5? Well, yes, it does. 155.5 equals 155.5. So you get a nice smiley face because you've actually checked that. Okay, so hopefully that's all right for you. It is quite a tough question, but it does boil down to x equals 8.5 and y equals 3.5 when you work through this using a simultaneous equation. Okay, so 17 minutes long video. I hope it's been useful to you. If you're not sure about anything, please do add a comment below. I don't particularly want to encourage too many tough questions, but it is really good for the channel and really good for me personally just to be challenged with these sorts of questions. I look forward to seeing you inside the next video.